when I got to grad school, first, second weekend, I have this paper due. I do the same thing. Night before, I'm online. I find a couple of sources, citations. I throw a paper together. I turn it in. And when I get it back, it is absolutely butchered. It is just bleeding red with ink, just notes and scratch outs and all kinds of stuff. And I don't remember if there was like an actual letter grade on it, but if there was, it was not a good one. And so I took the paper to my professor, like after class or something, and I was like, what's wrong with this paper? And he said, it's lazy. He said, you only looked at one side of the argument. You only looked and utilized sources that are very similar, that have very similar hypotheses, that had very similar experimental designs and very similar stances. You had no opposition. You had nothing challenging this one side. You just looked at the one side and you took it at face value and based your whole paper on that. And I understood what he was saying. And so I went back and I dug in deeper, and I found different studies, and I found opposing studies, and I found the other side. And then I rewrote it and turned it in, and it was fine. But it gained strength when it had that opposition, when it had the other side, when it had the other voices to look at, instead of just one narrative. Because if you're only listening to a single source, if you're only getting your information from a single source, you have to know that there's a bias there. And whether you get all of your news or your information from CNN or Fox News or a single source podcast, you have to look into it. You have to look at the credibility of what you're hearing and research that's out there, information that's out there from vastly different sources that have different political views, sources that do things differently, that have different perspectives. That is when you begin to put all of the pieces together to really be able to see everything that's out there. And it's critical that you gather all of the information at hand, that you know how to do that, and then formulate your own opinion. Because, just going with the flow, going with someone else's opinion is not healthy. And I think that a lot of people just kind of surround themselves with people who think similarly, people who have a lot of the same beliefs, and you're just creating that echo chamber. You're just hearing the same things over and over. You're not hearing anything outside of that. And I think a lot of people are okay with just being in that comfort zone, and they don't want to hear or realize that they could be wrong. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. I think it's important to be open to the idea that you can very well be wrong, but also be open to the idea that you can change your mind, you can change your opinion, you can change your perspective on anything, because there's always new information coming available. And we're living in a time where information is more readily available than it ever has been at any point in the history of the universe, right? At your fingertips, you have access to everything, to credible information, to books, to audiobooks, to podcasts, to academic articles. It's all out there. And my professor was right in that, just simply taking the word of a few people, taking the stance of a few people is the lazy way out. It's not digging in. And we have to dig in. We have to look at the opposition in order to strengthen an argument or to strengthen a perspective.